Hey, hey, thank you so much for joining another episode of Celeste, the Therapist Podcast. My name is Celeste. I'm a therapist from Boston. If you've never been into this podcast before, thank you for being here. What I do, I have long form content, which you're experiencing today. This is episode 3 out of 6. So we've already had two other episodes about this topic. We are talking about adult children of emotionally immature parents. The first episode, we talked about what emotional immaturity is. Last week, we talked about the roles we had to play as a child in order to survive. And today, we're talking about emotional loneliness and abandonment. So, I create these series and break them down for you to understand things differently. We also, every single day on this podcast, have a daily shift. So, if you're somebody that's looking to work on just consistency, getting some enlightenment, and you don't have a lot of time, the Daily Shift episodes will give you really quick, small nuggets to help you really think and reframe your day. This is something I do personally. I listen to different Buddhist teachings every single morning when I wake up, and it's something powerful about it, just helps me start my day. And so I said, why not do this for my own audience? Give them something that they can lean on first thing in the morning to start their day. So let's get right into the topic. So if you're new here, my goal is to give you information to help you be able to apply it to your life. So what can be helpful for you is if you have a notebook and a pen to like jot down information. And again, if you are a visual learner, you can find these episodes on YouTube where I create slides for the thing that I'm talking about to help you conceptualize it better. So if you go to youtube.com, search Celeste the Therapist, and I've categorized these series into different playlists. So I started actually a couple months ago with Healing Your Inner Child. And then after that, the next series we did was all about love. And then this series is Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents. And there's actually a book by Dr. Lindsay Gibson. You can find this everywhere. Really good book that breaks things down. So I'm essentially doing that on the podcast. So the intention behind today, why you can feel lonely even in relationships. So if you're somebody that's like, I feel lonely, but I feel like I have people in my life. It's not about the people, it's the disconnection that's happening. How emotional self-abandonment develops, why this pattern makes sense in childhood, and then how awareness begins reconnection. One huge thing about me is that I am somebody that believes in self-awareness and being mindful that you're doing it without judging yourself. The ways that you are now are ways that you had to do to get through life. And imagine like trying to work on healing and beating yourself up at the same time. I'm hoping with new knowledge, even when it feels hard, you can have some grace with yourself as you're going on this journey because the way that you may talk to yourself or about yourself on this journey, you wouldn't do that to other people. So why not give yourself the same compassion that you give to other people? So like let's jump into this next part. So what is emotional loneliness? So emotional loneliness isn't about being alone. It's not like you're literally alone. It's about feeling unseen, unmet, or unsupported emotionally. So you can be surrounded by people and still feel lonely. You may struggle to identify what you need, and you may downplay your emotions automatically, like without anything, something could come up for you. You know, if you're a longtime listener, I always talk about how the things from your past can show up, the feeling, the same feeling. Let's say you struggle with abandonment and you have a friend and your friend's hanging out with somebody else and you like the other person. Your friend doesn't, your friend's not owned to you, right? Your friend can be with other people. But instead of you recognizing that my friend hanging out with somebody else, this abandonment feeling is coming up because I struggled with that growing up. Instead of you recognizing that and being aware, you may attack your friend or you may create some unnecessary drama that has nothing to do with anything because you feel abandonment. When you become aware, you can't help the fact that you feel abandoned, right? Emotions are going to come, but you can work on how you're responding to that feeling. And that's the part that a lot of people aren't doing. The feeling's coming up and they're completely responding to it, making it about that when it could be about something else. I see this a lot in relationships. And a lot of times, because when I'm working with people, I understand their history, I'm able to help them make connections to the present. And it's this big aha moment. It's something powerful about being able to understand why things are feeling the way they're feeling and you're not just feeling them. It's such a powerful thing. The more you could become aware of the patterns that's happening in your life, the better equipped you will be to dealing with it as it arises. So when no one consistently responded to your inner world as a child, you learned not to rely on it, right? When I talk about the inner world, I'm talking about like our system gives us signs we're not okay, the emotions that come up. So these emotions that may have came up growing up, nobody ever talked to you about it. You never had a safe space to process. And so what happens is you don't learn to like listen to it, your intuition, the things that you feel. You don't listen to it, you ignore it. And now, as an adult, you continue to ignore it. And so you're always looking for the outside validation, the outside thing to fulfill you when we know that things outside of us, relationships, people, they change, right? So if my reliance on my being okay is according to how people are treating me, I'm always going to feel like I'm just a leaf like flowing in the wind, right? Just when the wind blows, I have to blow with it. I'm never going to feel like I'm grounded. I'm never going to feel like I have power over my life if I'm not mindful of what is. Um, let's go to the next slide. Okay. So, oh, let me go this way to the next part. So, what is self-abandonment, right? Because there's the emotional loneliness and then there's self-abandonment. So, self-abandonment happens when you disconnect from your own needs, your own emotions, or the boundaries to maintain connection, right? I said earlier, the way that we disconnect from ourselves and abandon ourselves, and the way that we feel lonely because we learned how to ignore the inner world. So we are looking for things outside of us to fulfill us, which is never going to be consistent. So the self-abandonment happens when you disconnect from those needs. So here are some examples, right? Saying yes when you mean no. I'm take a pause because I'm sure some people that are listening to this know that that's something that they do, right? Raise your hand if you feel like you minimize your feelings, right? Oh, it's not that bad, or it's okay. Like I was notorious for that, minimizing my feelings to make sure somebody else was okay. But forget Celeste, right? I was not being fair to myself. Ignoring exhaustion. There are so many people right now that are very exhausted, feeling very overwhelmed, and you tell yourself, I have no time. Or you tell yourself, if I don't do it, who's going to do it? Right? And I feel really sad when I hear people talk that way, right? I'll challenge a little bit, but not too much, because it takes time for awareness to happen. So when I'm working with people, I don't push, but I also give them things to think about. And I said, you know what? Yeah, you're right. If you don't say yes, then who's gonna do it? But if you're not here, I promise you they'll find somebody to do it, right? When that job that is overworking you and you're underpaid and you're doing nothing to work on getting something different because you're so stuck and used to being treated that way, when you say who's going to do it, you're right. Who is going to do it? Because they're so used to you saying yes that they don't even have to think about giving it to somebody else. And God forbid something happens to you, guess what? They'll find somebody else to do it, right? The way that we create, our mind is so powerful, it can create ways to make what we're doing okay. It's the norm, right? And just because it's the norm doesn't mean it's right. Just because when you're trying to do the right thing for yourself and it feels wrong doesn't mean it's wrong. It feels wrong, but it's not wrong. The reason why the feeling is wrong is because your system is not used to you doing what you need for yourself. Your system is not used to you being prioritized and putting yourself first. The last example is choosing others' comfort over your own safety. I'm going to take a pause. How many people recognize that that's them? Do you put your own comfort and safety over somebody else's, right? Are you like, oh, I don't want this person to think I don't care, so let me say yes, even though I had planned on being in my bed today and watching TV and relaxing, right? But they really need me, but you really need you. And until you start recognizing that, and especially for Black women, right? I have such a passion for Black women because I am a Black woman and I that's the main population I work with. And I see how we will self-sacrifice for everybody else, for your kids, for your partner, for your family, right? But when it comes to you, you tell yourself, like, well, how can I do this when they need me? If you don't recognize you need you, no one's ever gonna make you see that for yourself. You have to see that. Self-abandonment isn't weakness, it's a learned survival strategy. This is something you've learned over the years and the way you've been able to survive. So if you're going to do something different and change this pattern, understand it's going to feel hard. I always say if it was easy, everybody would be doing it, right? But it's not. How this starts in childhood. Um, the connection to emotionally immature parenting, right? Needs were dismissed, minimized, or ignored. So sometimes your parent didn't have the capacity to even ask you how you was feeling. Guess what? They don't even know how they're feeling. They didn't even have the capacity to ask themselves. So again, this is not about blame. This is about recognizing how the pattern started. Emotions felt like a burden, right? I've worked with people who tell me, well, what's the point in being sad? Nothing's going to change. What's the point in acknowledging how I'm feeling? Who cares? And I say, well, if you don't acknowledge what is, how do you work through that? If you don't acknowledge what is, how do you understand what is happening with yourself? But obviously, when your needs were dismissed, minimized, or ignored as a child, even as a 35-year-old person, you find yourself doing that to yourself because that's the way you were taught and you never learned how to do it any other way. Children learn connection required compliance. That's a hard one, right? If I don't do what they need me to do, will they love me the same, right? If I don't sacrifice what I need to give them what they need, will they still be here for me? These are ways that you may have learned as a child. So you get into relationships, whether they're friendships, whether they're partnerships, you get into these relationships and you find yourself doing the same thing, not that this partner or this friend asks you to do it, and you start to feel used, you start to feel like you're giving too much because you're not feeling the reciprocation. And so when you've learned that in order for me to connect with people, I have to be compliant, I have to say yes, I have to do what they ask. You setting yourself up for failure because then what about you? You're not giving yourself the opportunity to ask yourself, what do you need? When being yourself threatened connection, you learn to leave yourself first. Like, I need to just put myself on the back burner at 20 years old, at 30 years old, at 40 years old, you know? Some people live the rest of their lives putting other people first and they forget about themselves, not because they enjoy it, but because that's the way they were taught. And I'm hoping with these episodes and these daily shifts that we're doing, you learn that it's okay to acknowledge what's happened. And just because, yes, I have been living this way and operating this way out of the mere fact of it's being part of my system that I have the ability to change. I have the power to change. You have more power than you realize. You just have to have faith and start believing in yourself. It's something that I truly believe. So how this shows up in your adulthood, right? Some common adult patterns. You have difficulty identifying your needs is issue. You end up staying too long in unsatisfying relationships. You feel responsible for others' emotions. This is a huge one, feeling responsible for somebody's emotions. So I can't like request, like, hey, I need help with this because I don't want you to be upset. I can't request, hey, I don't like it when you use this word around me. It makes me feel uncomfortable. So I'll just stay and feel uncomfortable. Chronic guilt when prioritizing yourself. If you don't prioritize yourself at this big age, nobody's going to do it for you. I don't know how else to say that. And yes, you will feel guilty by prioritizing yourself if you've never done it before, right? The same way, if you've never ridden a bike and you decide to go ride a bike. I remember when I first started learning how to ride a bike, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so hard. I'm never going to learn this. But I can get on the bike now and I know how to ride it. So when I'm starting something new, it's going to be uncomfortable. I started this podcast back in 2018 and it's hearing myself talk felt so weird. Coming on camera felt so weird. So yeah, it's going to feel hard. Things are going to feel hard when you're trying to change. But if you keep going, it feels like a piece of cake. Like I doing this, riding a bike is so easy. Getting on camera is so easy. Coming on this podcast is so easy now because it's been a long time of me prioritizing being consistent, right? So the chronic guilt when you're prioritizing yourself is going to come, but I need you to stay the course and start working on prioritizing yourself because the job will put your ad in the paper, right? Your kids are going to become adults and they're going to leave the house, right? You got to learn how to prioritize what you need and build things off of it. You actually have, I feel like I have a different level of capacity because I prioritize myself. The first few hours of the day are dedicated to me. There's nobody else there, just me. No partner, no kids, no clients, no podcast, no emails, no social media, no work. Literally just me. I can't imagine starting my day any other way. Another pattern is feeling empty after giving so much, right? You should not feel depleted by giving. You didn't lose yourself. The issue is that you just set yourself aside. And I think if you can keep that in mind, right? I didn't lose myself. You learn how to put yourself aside, put your needs aside. And the more you understand this and make these small changes, they can create so much big change. But a lot of times we're not used to looking at the small changes that we're doing. We're not used to celebrating the moments that we create the change in. And if you can work on creating those small changes, I promise you, your mind and body has no other choice but to fall in line with the direction that you're taking it. You're giving your mind, you're giving your system new information. And the more you give it new information, it just starts to comply. But if you don't give it new information, it will continue to utilize the information that it's had in the past. And if you've had a hard past, that's not the way you want to operate in life. So, a gentle reframe, right? This is very important. I want you to remember the goal isn't to stop being caring or attuned. I think it's beautiful that I care about people. I think it's beautiful that I am aware of people's needs and people's emotions, right? That's the reason why I'm in the career path that I'm in. But when I started in this path, I was doing it all wrong because I was giving out more than I was giving to myself. And so now I give to myself, I continue to give more. I continue to get these amazing ideas for my business, for my life, right? So the goal isn't about not caring. I'm not telling you not to care about people or be attuned. What I want you to think about is how do I stop disappearing in order to be loved? You don't have to disappear and you don't have to neglect yourself to be loved, right? It's a powerful thing if you can work on loving yourself even when it feels hard. And it's going to require some discipline and intention on your end, but it's a beautiful thing when it starts to happen. Some common misconceptions I just want to point out about self-abandonment. and emotional loneliness. People think emotional loneliness means I don't have people in my life. But the fact of the matter is, emotional loneliness is about disconnection, not isolation. So many people experiencing emotional loneliness are in relationships, have families, are very social, are the ones that people lean on, right? Another misconception, if my parents love me, this doesn't apply. This is the truth, right? Love and emotional attunement aren't the same thing. Many emotionally immature parents, they love their children, provide it materially, but they lack the emotional capacity, right? You can be loved and still emotionally unmet. And again, a lot of those parents that I know that love their kids, provide it materially, may not even have had the capacity to do that for themselves. So this isn't about blame, it's about understanding what is happening, right? When you feel like my life is fine, but why do I feel this way? Start to think about these things so that you can work on giving yourself what you need. The last misconception I want to point out, if I'm aware of this, I should just be able to stop. The truth is awareness doesn't instantly rewire your nervous system, right? That there's a ton of books. We can read all the books, we can listen to all the podcasts in the world. Self-abandonment is often automatic, is body-based, and is triggered under stress. So insight will explain the pattern, right? This podcast, I'm helping you explain the pattern, but healing it takes repetition and safety. If you don't work on being intentional, even after these episodes, if you are a long time listener, and you're not applying the stuff to your life, all you're doing is listening, right? I try to be intentional on giving you solutions, giving you ways to think about these things. Over the last few series, I've given out homework assignments, right? These are for you to apply to your life to get better understanding. And the more you create these small changes, again, change will start to happen. But you got to start creating those changes in order for it to happen. So, speaking of homework, first, let's just take a deep breath. You know, I'm all about the body, and, um, this was a lot to take in. I hope that it gives somebody some insight, like you feel like a little free, like, oh my gosh, that makes sense, right? If you're in therapy, bring this to your therapist. Even if you're not, continue to journal about this, right? These moments of aha moments are going to grow into bigger moments, into bigger awareness. So, this is the homework, noticing self-abandonment. So, one, when do I override my own needs? Two, what emotion do I ignore first? And you can use a emotion wheel, a feelings wheel. Grab a feelings wheel. You can Google it, feelingswheel.com, or just Google feelings wheel so you can actually pick out the feeling that you find yourself abandoning and ignoring. And then the last one is, who do I abandon myself with most often? Who do I abandon myself with most often? So you don't have to change anything. This is just about noticing, right? Just notice, pay attention. These are things to think about to help you pay attention. Do a quick body-based check-in because this topic lives in our nervous system, right? So also once a day, pause and ask, what am I feeling right now? Right? And if you can't name it, you can pick a color, get those feelings wheel that has the colors on them. Get a color, and then where do I feel it in my body, right? These things show up in our body heavily, right? The more that we start to recognize that, I share this all the time. When I'm 14 years old, I'm in the ER, my back is hunched over, was dealing with a lot of trauma at the time. Nobody asked me what was going on. They gave me muscle relaxers. After a couple days, I was able to put my back up, but it wasn't until I was a adult in therapy, like doing yoga, I started to and becoming more grounded. I started to recognize when I'm overwhelmed, my back, it feels like somebody put some boulder over my back. So that is my body responding to stress. Like, why is it that in my mid 20s is when I'm learning this stuff? Why isn't this common knowledge that everything is connected? Why isn't the doctors asking me these questions? Right? Um, so I need you to be mindful and be more aware of what's going on in your body because your body's going to give you signs sometimes before you even intellectualize it. So even if the answer is, I don't know, that counts because guess what? You're pausing to become aware. That's all I want you to do. Just pause, become aware, be patient with yourself. Self-abandonment once kept you connected, right? In order to like get the thing you abandoned yourself, right? It worked when it worked. But now awareness is how you begin to reconnect with yourself, right? If you want to work on reconnecting with yourself, you have to be aware. Yes, this is hard being aware when when I work with people and they're like, "Dang, this awareness thing is so hard. I wish I wasn't aware." They say that jokingly but not jokingly because of how much they're feeling. And I say, "You know what? But you were feeling these things even if you weren't acknowledging it." So, the consensus is that they're happy that they're aware because it gives them a chance to change. But it's very hard work. I just want to acknowledge that. I don't want to pretend like this is easy. So in the next episode, 5:30, we're discussing why boundaries feel so hard and why that makes sense. So if you're somebody that struggles with boundaries, next episode, you're going to start to understand why boundaries feel so hard because we want you all to work on having boundaries because boundaries is for you, not them. Okay. So if you want to follow me, you can follow me, my website, stwyt.com. That's the wellness center that I have. And then I have the podcast, the website, celestetherapist.com, where you can find more information about me. You can find me on all social media platforms. All you got to do is search Celeste the Therapist. I have a personal page and then I have a podcast page on TikTok and then a wellness page on TikTok as well. So until next time, beautiful people, I will talk to you later.